Welcome on my first step ever. This podcast where we go beyond the powerful titles, the polished resumes, and those stressful, anxiety filled moments. I think we all had those, self doubt moments. We really question ourselves, even if we do well certain days. And the days on which we do not, we are so critical about ourselves that we feel, are we even worth it? But how do we even get started? Is the question that we have. So, in our latest episode so far, we have explored how simple yet powerful, courageous steps can, taken in the face of doubt and uncertainty, can help us lead to find that life of purpose and growth. And I think with your feedback, it has reminded me to, that it is so important for someone to say this to us that, hey, I did not know everything when I started off, but I just started off and then things started happening. So, keeping that as our core theme, today we are continuing that journey with someone who's made it in his life's mission to guide others through theirs. Meet Inderpal, a certified life, career, and leadership coach with over 2 decades of international experience across Australia, the Middle East, Turkey, South Africa, and India. You can't beat that. From working with defense personnel to leaders in FMCG and beyond, his passion lies in helping people unlock the true potential, not just professionally, but as whole humans. What makes Inderpal's journey special isn't just where he's reached, but how he got there. And that's exactly why we have invited him on this podcast to help us uncover his journey. The twists and the pivots and the doubts, that crucial moment when he decided to listen to his inner voice and take the first step. And I'm sure many more first steps after that. So if you've been waiting for a sign or wondering whether your story is enough, this episode is your reminder that the journey matters just as much as the destination. So follow the button of this particular podcast, subscribe to it if you're here the first time, and let's just dive in. Inderpal, welcome on my first step ever.
Thank you. Thank you for inviting me, Shani. It's an absolute honor to be on your podcast and be with you over here. That introductions on a reflection. Oh my God.
Interesting that you mentioned this because a lot of our guest speakers, when they're here and when they hear their intro, a kind of a synopsis of their journey, they feel, wow, did I really do that? And so, my listeners and my friends who are out there, if you're watching this or listening to this, when you sit back and reflect on your journey so far, you will also have this realization that you did this. So, but right now, we're going to focus back on Inderpal because this is all about understanding how Inderpal became what he is today and what led to him become the amazing person, the strong-willed person that he is from within. So, Inderpal, I think we need to kind of take a few steps back. Like in every conversation, I do that because that's where things, start from. We'll rewind the tape a bit, and I would love to understand what kind of environment or mindset were you surrounded by when you were growing up in your early days.
All right. Well, let's see how actually go then. Okay. So I was born in India in Delhi. Grew up in humble beginnings, and with supportive parents who were letting us do what we wanted to do, sort of a thing. So I would say it wasn't the childhood wasn't that challenging, but yeah, it was humble still. And then we kind of grew up, got into roles. The passion was to become a software engineer. So I kind of studied software engineering, and as destiny would have it, when the time came to get into the jobs, there was this slump in the IT market, and you can't find anything. So my first job was that of an IT trainee. As an IT trainer, covering some IT concepts. Because never wanted to be in the world, training, teaching. So I actually quit my first job after a year because I just didn't want to do that. And my heart was broken because, that IT dream was shattered, and what would I do? And then, as destiny would have it, I started believing now, when I reflect back a lot on when it comes to kind of, destiny has a plan for us. So I went into customer services role. And there I came across
Exciting.
some people, surprisingly, I came across some people who had seen me training, and they said, "You're good at that. Why are you quitting?" Like, no, I don't want to do that. But these guys were the ones who kind of, had a keen eye for talent. They let me be. They said, "Okay, get into customer service. We'll see that." And then they started throwing some kind of, training assignments as part of the customer service jobs. And they started kind of absorbing me into it. So these are the people I still thank that, they were able to pinpoint my capabilities. And then what happened was I started finding value in training, because when people came back to me, said like, "Well, this is my first job, and what you trained us today helped me do good, at my job." That was felt
Wow.
very rewarding. So cut to from there, the journey back into learning and development started. I started kind of enjoying because it was rewarding. But what I kind of realized was that as a personality, in this phase, in the way we can grown up in humble environment, we were kind of, I was kind of, very that, that risk averse kind of a person, that you want to make sure that you are safe. Your next opportunity, your next step is kind of safe. Very, very kind of risk averse. Then an opportunity kind of landed, and this was the funniest job interview I've ever had. So I had no plans of changing any jobs. I was happy, I had just got married, and then I get this call from somebody in UAE. They said like, "We have an open position." I said, "No, I'm not interested." But this guy again, another person, I don't know what they had seen in me. Like, at least let's have an interview. Like, I'm not interested. And then they said, "Okay, as a respect to our head of HR, at least have a conversation." It's like best practice sharing sort of a thing. And why I call it the funniest interview, that time there was an external kind of an location where they had to book for video conferencing, overseas video conferencing.
All right.
Yeah,
Way long back.
yeah. So they had organized this on my way from office to work, office to home, so that it's convenient. So I went there. I said hello to the person on the screen, and the screen went blank. They could see me, but I couldn't see them. And we had a conversation. I was like, "Okay, whatever it is." And then they sent me an offer letter. And then I was like, I spoke to my dad. He's still living with the family. I'm like, "Dad, I don't want to go." And he's like, "I just got married. I have a good job." It's like that safety net again that kicked in, safe thinking. And my dad was like, "UAE is only 3 hours away. It's giving you an opportunity to kind of consolidate all your learnings. If you don't like it, come back." And that's what like made me think. That was a trigger. So it made me think that that's saying not much risk. You still have home, to come back to. So I took that opportunity. And that's where how way back in 2007, I stepped out of India for the first time.
Wow. This, I'm going to just
Yeah,
kind of jump in over here
yeah,
because I
yeah.
think I feel there's so much to kind of, unpack up till this point in your life, because I think first of all this sounds so amazing, you kind of growing up, having a really good decent education, then getting into something that you did not like, you quit, but then you opted into something which started really giving you good, in your profession it felt right for you, you were in the right direction, and then things worked out for you. But when anyone hears these stories, everything sounds so good on the surface level. What I want to kind of break down before we fly off to UAE and know what the first chapter held for you over there, let's go back to the point where, in the past when you were, let's say, in your just before getting into your undergrad. What sort of a person were you back then, as a teenager, or early in your early 20s, before starting with your undergrad? What were you thinking, aspirations? Were you confused with your future, or were you like, that's okay, I don't mind, I just go and do whatever I can, I'll figure it out? Were you like, very calm, composed person? What was your mindset back then, and how did you used to deal with challenges?
You're really digging deep then. Okay. So way back, like one, I was a short person. short and skinny, so always in my class, always ahead in the lines, and to the extent all my friends were 6 feet tall. So that was kind of that personality thing. So from a confidence perspective, it was fine, I would say. But I was shy. I was quiet. I was not the one as a personality who would go out and make conversations. Yeah, you can say reserved, average student, right? But had very small circle of friends, but really good ones. So they're all like more than 6 feet tall. Would pick me up from my back along with my bag like this. So that's how it was. Yes, yes, it's
Good
hilarious. But I did
indeed.
it. I wouldn't class it as bullied because there was so much love in that.
Okay, that's
So
friendship.
yeah, that's friendship, and those are still close to those friendships are still close to my heart after like what almost 30 years. Yeah, so
That's
still close.
that's exciting. So from being fairly confident, skinny, with great friends, kind of a young, maybe young adult at that point in time when you had just started with the undergrad, you did what I think most people do, kind of engineering or whatever the few selective options we had, and then you mentioned there came a turning point in your life when you graduated. There were not enough jobs because of the financial market scenario at that point in time. You eventually did end up taking up a trainee job, but between that period when you did take up the trainee job and when you did not have any job at that point in market, how did you deal with that situation at that point in time, and how did you actually land that trainee job?
Well, that was a frustrating period actually. From a background, like I come from a very technically minded family. My dad was an was an engineer himself, so we've grown up with tools and technology always like, and that was kind of easy for me, pretty natural, and that's why the whole that time for the first time computers as a subject was introduced in our school, and I was doing really good in that. So that's what that kind of inspired and made me feel that IT is something that. But then was for almost like a year. It was a very challenging piece because we're trying to find jobs, and at the same time, with the technologies being rolled out, it's like if you're not into it, you are getting outdated very quickly. So the way IT programming languages, technologies were being rolled out at that time,
Yes.
and there was like a big boom. That was very frustrating. So one thing that I kind of thank my parents for is the learning that I kind of really imbibed early on is that I should think of an outcome only after taking some action. So I had to
That's
keep doing
interesting.
something. I cannot just sit there and hope for a job, you know.
Hmm.
So what also I did was like, if there's something that I need to do, how about I start my own company? So actually, that was my first entrepreneurial kind of thing that I did for almost like a year, almost a year and a half, 2 years,
Wow.
where I was assembling computers, and I had a scooter, and we would go deliver those PCs with my younger brother sitting behind me holding it
Exciting.
over there, and then we it's like that. So we cannot. So the learning was I cannot think of an outcome before making an effort. So there was something else that I could do. So we kept doing it, but we realized that's not going to be sustainable because
Okay.
I did not have that business mind. So it was like I had to get back. Till that time, the most frustrating part was now all the hard work that I've done for almost 4 years on getting that qualification is gone getting outdated, and that was really frustrating. And then through the people that I got trained, I could get a teaching assignment and still going for interviews and trying and managed to somehow get this job. I don't know. Again, it was like a blessing. It just landed somewhere and I started training. But because at that point of time, the mind was so set that my dream was IT, technology, and programming. I did not see that as an opportunity. I just took that as another action in the line. And only so when you look at this timeline, so after completing my qualifications, it's been now 3 years. So, and I'm just training. about concepts of IT, but not doing the programming. So my programming skills got outdated. It was like very heartbreaking. And that is the reason, again, I was like, I don't want to do it, but then what else would I do? And that's when
So
I looked around. Yeah.
yeah, please go on. So that's
No.
when you said that's how you started looking around a different kind of a job. But then what really drove you towards picking up customer service role at that point in
Yes.
time?
So the customer service, that's another funny one, because the thing was, now if it's not IT, then anything is fine. But I have to do something.
Okay,
So
so
that's
you're
how
like
it was. Yeah.
either it's my way or highway kind of a
Yeah.
thing.
It's like it's not even a highway. I had to make it a highway.
Okay.
So that's what it was. And there was just one consideration that I had put on myself, that since I stepped into college after second year in college, I decided I'm not going to ask for any pocket money from my parents. So I have to keep doing something to keep, to at least to run my own expenses. So that's how it happened. And at that time, customer service, next thing that was happening after IT was contact centers, customer services back in India. And I was just so frustrated. So this guy who literally picked me up in school like this, his wife was working in a customer service kind of contact center role, and we kind of like, there are some opportunities if you wanted to try. That's how I landed into that customer service job, and then the journey went from there.
This, I would say, Inderpal, that I'm glad that we discussed this a little bit more in depth, because I think a few things that I learned right now, and I like to kind of reiterate for my listeners today, is never judge the outcome before taking an action. So
Yeah.
that's very powerful. Second thing, self reliance. Whether whether something that you were really focused on did not work out, you rightly said, for many of us, we are focused, we have clarity to begin with. Not all have that clarity, but people who do have clarity, and if you do not land that, at some point in time, that doesn't really mean or define that you cannot do anything else in your life, and you at least have to go and start doing something else to keep the ball rolling. That's another important aspect in your journey that I have kind of understood so far, and I think that could really benefit our listeners if they're stuck somewhere right now, that this is not the end, this is just a break, and probably you need to maybe look at some other way of maybe reaching where you want to, and you probably will reach if you're so determined. So now coming back to the place, in the par, where in your journey, in your story, where you are happily married, you are happily settled with this job, you're getting good reviews, and you're happy doing this, we would like to understand that if you do have the knowledge, that how did you get that call from UAE from out of nowhere. I am sure from you have some understanding how did you get that, and how did that blank video call really convert for you, because I think that's one of the most important discussion
Yes.
that probably you had, and that could really help our listeners, in these challenging times, understand that what they can do in their first steps ever.
Yeah. So as a coach now, when I kind of reflect on the journey, one thing that I realized that helped a lot is, number one was definitely the intention to take action. Always, you have to have the intention to take the action. And then the other thing was that this is all connected. One step leads to the other, whether we like it or not. So we are sowing seeds every day. So whatever I was doing in my first job, if I had done training, somebody kind of noticed me for training skills. I went into customer service. I love the customer service aspect. You know, that's where I realized my kind of passion is driven by serving others. So that customer service role, I flourished there. But again, they brought me back. Somebody saw the other talent, which was training, and they brought me into customer service training. They brought it all together, and I flourished because that was where linked to my passion. So it is all getting connected now. If I had not gone into customer service or done that training, I would not have got into customer service training. And when I got into customer service training, I had the best aha moment when I was asked to see if I can support the implementation of the learning management systems. I'm like, yes, that's what it is, because that's what my IT
Woohoo!
skills come into play. Yeah. So nothing gets wasted. right? And I did so well. I was recognized so well around the learning management system using
This
the
is
Oracle
beautiful.
database. Was so much into it. I became the kind of at that moment the national go-to person for the learning management system. I was like felt so proud in that job because this was IT customer service training in a telecom. And at that time, they were launching BlackBerry in India.
Hmm.
And I became the first person in India to have a BlackBerry in my hand because I was supposed to train people on how to use and sell BlackBerry. And I was trained directly by Research in Motion, such a kind of a proud feeling. It breaks my heart
What a
to see that
pleasure to
it's
meet
gone
you,
now.
Inderpal.
Yeah, I mean, such a blessing. It's all coming together, right? When I was looking for further growth, maybe that's what caught the attention, and I got that call. So yeah,
I just want to kind of,
yeah,
just pause here for a moment just to reiterate and reinforce this particular takeaway that I have right now from what you mentioned, that, what you really want, what is your core, what you're really sure about, that stays with you. But you can probably, think of other ways where you can incorporate that if
yeah,
what you're looking for is not happening, or you're not able to reach that directly. There is not just one path to where you want to get. There are several paths that can take you. So you can start thinking, how can you get there? The how is something that people figure it out as and when you go. So you do not need to change your goal. How is the part of the journey, and that's what makes your journey special and beautiful. And coming back to Inderpal's journey, that's where things work for him. So we would love to hear, Inderpal, as you left it rare, you said that's probably what people from your UAE office picked up.
yeah. And like I said, it's all about something was driving me. I could not define it. The what is connecting the dots. And today I call it as a blessing because I was able to see it. Maybe it was the intention to take action and keep moving forward is what was driving, and the opportunities kept coming. So this job that I got in UAE was a completely different sector. It was retail. But what was exciting about this one was I was able to consolidate all my experience of whatever I've built in learning and development and systems and stuff into setting up this new kind of business setup for learning and development. And what really excited was this was electronics retail. So I was surrounded by technology again.
Everything that you love.
Everything I love. And I learned so much in this job about appliances, computers, and so much. It was very engaging. And that was a good kind of, step I took. I would have said no had I not had that small conversation with dad who said, don't be risk averse. Go take this step forward and we'll see how it goes. There's nothing to lose. At that moment, I can't. When I reflect, I realized that yes, I was as much as I was feeling that I'm progressive, but at the back of my mind, I was so risk averse and so caught up in being safe.
This is such a big
So
quality, I would say, Inderpal, that, to be able to accept that there are certain things that one needs to improve in them. So that's really amazing that you kind of address that right now. So then what happened? We love to hear more.
the funny part is I can only address that or call it out now.
Now, but that's great.
It took me
Whenever.
20 years. It took me 20 years, right, to do that.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's how it all started. And then there was something exciting that happened in UAE. So job was fine, me and my wife back in UAE, good jobs, and you're making tax-free money, everything's falling in place, right? And then one day what happened was there was in the building opposite to my house, somebody put up a board. It says, open a new office, new business. Said, moving to Australia. I'm like, what is that? So me and my wife just out of curiosity just walked in. See, like, what is this migration to Australia all about? And they explained everything, that this is why people go to Australia and all, and you are eligible and everything happened. And I was like, is it that easy? I was like, okay, just you have to give in just your documents and all, and that time even the cost was very little, very less. We were talking 2018. So
Okay.
we said, okay, let's put in the application then. So we gave them, we followed the procedure. that boat triggered the query, and then we went through some quick checks and did all of that. There was this English language test required, which was like I just without preparation went through and did it, which was like my English medium kind of education supported that, and I did it. But I was very very clear at that time in my head. And this is what I'm saying now, that I was very clear in my head at that time. I was very clear that I'm not going to leave my jobs and this good progress in my career to migrate to someplace. We put in the application. When we get the PR, I'm going to say no if I don't go there with the job. So I was like very, very clear. So I'm not going to compromise. I was playing the safe mindset again, risk averse, right? So I want to make sure. So my conditions were that once I get my, the migration thing sorted, PR, I will not step down from my current position or kind of level of the role. And I'm not going to step into Australia until I actually have a job offer of the next level or equal. Otherwise, I'm going to say no to it. That's absolutely fine. I'm not desperate. That's what I was thinking. And guess what happened? We waited almost 7 years on that application. Something went
Seven
wrong.
years.
7 years because there were some policy changes and these new rules were
Wow.
applied. And I actually had a family sponsorship on my application because my
All
aunt
right.
lived in New South Wales for 7 years and nothing happened. And we didn't even bother because life was good. I was growing. I moved to another company, moved to the best job in the world. You'll see me celebrating, talking about it. This was in the chocolate factory making chocolates. And I like have a sweet tooth, close kind of immunity to chocolate. Best kind of got some really good mentors, professional mentors and stuff there. So life was going pretty good. And again, always the thinking was before I take the next step, I have to be very, very secure. And things should happen that way. So the new job required me to travel across the Middle East and other countries. That's where international experience came about. Things are moving fine. But throughout this journey, I always felt that there's something missing. I'm getting promotions, getting money, I'm driving the car that I want, but why am I not satisfied? That
That's a
question
question.
used to, yeah, that always was bothering. Could not pinpoint, what is it that is bothering me? So after about 8 years on waiting on that application, while still I was like working very well in my job, progressing further. Obviously, there was a bit of as you grow up the ladder, the stress was increasing in the jobs, though it was rewarding, but it felt like it is good stress, which is fine. So after 8 years, I get a note from my migration consultant saying the department has returned your application, saying that you've gone way down in that priority list, so it will not go through. So we are returning your money back to you. So it was not a rejection, but a return. And by
Okay.
that time, by the way, my daughter was also born. So she was born in 2013, right? So we got this thing back in Jan 2016. They returned. But we thought, okay, now that we are not going to Australia, let's go for a holiday. Yeah. So it's like, let's go and meet my aunt who had visited Dubai, and visited us. She had invited us
Yeah.
over. We were thinking that we are anyways going to move there, but now it didn't work. I had no regrets because I was still in the
Hmm.
job that I was enjoying and stuff. So we actually came for a holiday to New South Wales in 2016. And when you come from a place where there is all desert, the only thing that catches your attention is trees. It was green. It was raining. Imagine, I've never seen rain in
Okay.
UAE, and
You
now it's
landed
in
at a
rain.
good time.
Oh, loved it, loved it. And I still remember, we were at the Bulai beach. It was raining, so we are in this restaurant. There's this shed and the restaurant there. I think it's a club or something. And I was sipping my cup of coffee while my daughter and my wife was sitting at the table. I went ahead and I was looking at the ocean. And that moment, something clicked. And told myself, I think we should try again. We should try again to come and move to Australia. Is this place worth coming to? And this journey, something surprising happened. We went back. We reached back to that person and we said like, what can we do if we want to do it again? He said like, I've already, you paid my fee, so your profession, which is learning and development, is in demand in South Australia. If you are okay to South Australia, we can put in another application. You just do some formalities and tests again. And we did that. This was in around August, September. And this time, exactly on 20 Jan 17, I got my PR application. So the first time, it was 7 years waiting when I was telling myself, it doesn't matter, I won't go if I don't get a job. And this time, somewhere from my heart over that cup of coffee, I told myself I have to come here. And this time it materialized in 7 months. I don't know if
This
there's a
is,
sign or connection, a vibe
yeah,
there.
I think this sounds like such a miraculous story, to be really honest, for a lot of people, like I think there's always a pull, there's always a reason for something, and it sounds more like when something is put into your plate, but you are not probably focusing on that. That's not what your priority is, but somehow or some way that comes back to you. And if it's meant to happen, it's that kind of a story where people say if it's meant to happen, it will happen.
But yes, you're right. It's like that. Belief from our Hindu mythology says that, when something that you really want from your heart, that will come to you, but it's meant for you. What, Ishani? This is a risk-averse person. So the feeling was as if a big water balloon has been burst on my. As much as it
No.
was exciting that I can move, I didn't have a job. Surprisingly, my family was in New South Wales. Nobody in Adelaide, nobody in there. What to do? I was like, should I say no? Should I wait? Kind of a dilemma thing going in the head. And when that was going in my head, I still remember, I was driving with my manager. We were going to some meeting and he was just talking. I was Australian. And I told him that I've kind of got the PR, but I'm not sure if I should go and all. And he asked me this question: what would happen if you don't go? It's right in front of you. What would happen if you don't go? Well, that made me think. I think, but I don't have a job. I have to step back. I've never done that. How will I manage all that risk? And he said, as long as you're willing to go, we are going to help you out. I was like, oh wow. And that's when, in that network, I
Mhm.
was assigned a career coach, a mindset coach, somebody to support me with the network in financial planning. So
That's incredible, Inderpal.
these were the people around, and I had to use their support. They coached me. That was my first hand coaching experience on myself, who helped me prepare the mindset to think positive, to have that growth mindset. And I was already had the intent. I was ready to take action. If I know what I need to do, I can do it, right? So to clear that chaos, this is how things can be done. Put a structure to it. And I then made that big move, knowing nobody in South Australia, no one at all, and started from there. And I was shocked. And this shock was a shock for myself, that when I landed and when I started through that process, which we had planned for and agreed for, I was able to get the job that I wanted within 2 months' time of landing, the completing the formalities, finding the house. My wife, who had taken a career break, was able to get back to work and she start her career, and everything fell in place. Well, I was the one who was so risk averse, and look what you've done in the past. And from there on, it was a complete shift in the mindset that if you have a plan, you can capitalize on opportunities.
Absolutely. And I think I like to kind of pause at one particular moment in going back a little, like just a couple of moments back in the story where you mentioned that, first when you felt that the balloon bursted, of a water balloon bursted on your head, that,
Yeah.
oh, what? It's real. Now we have to make the move. So you definitely did make the move. The reason for you became a little bit more clear with this coaching leadership, new experience career that was kind of calling out to you. But besides that, what was that inner switch that kind of really helped you, take that move even while you did fear?
Oh, well, I would say it was not the moment which made me think a little was that question: what if I don't do it? That
Mm.
means when I retire, will I go back to India because UAE cannot be permanent? I don't want to go back to India. So this is my chance, That was the thinking. And then the settling into that feeling that I can do it and should do it was gradual. Because when I spoke to my coaches, they addressed my individual circumstance and my particular way of thinking. That's what brought the confidence that I'm not alone. If I'm getting stuck, then there was always a fallback plan. If I'm thinking risk, then how do we manage risk? You always hope for the best, and if it doesn't work, then have a fallback plan. As long as that clarity is there, so I gave myself time. I said I'll give myself 1 year to see and settle in, and it worked in 2 months. Right? So it became easier. There was the confidence of knowing that you're being supported was so amazing. So it's like the opportunities are all around us, whether we want to pick it or not. And then that was one big shift in my mindset. I told you I was very kind of quiet person who would not go out and meet people upfront.
Yes.
So this one was like, oh, there are I'm not alone. There are people. It's up to me now whether I want to reach out or not. So there are a lot of people, I've heard them saying in mythologies like, if you have a plan or a dream, don't share with anyone because, there's this concept of evil eye. I apply my concept is the other way around. That if you have a plan, you tell everyone. You never know who might want to help you out with your dream.
That's really amazing because I think what I would like to also reiterate over here for my listeners or whoever is watching us right now is that this is a theme that has been common all across in even our conversations earlier, that taking a calculative risk is so important, but taking the risk is even more important. So I think that always pays off if you have a certain kind of plan in mind. And sometimes, in very rare cases, when you see that big opportunity coming in, sometimes you have to take the risk even if you have no fallback option. But I think once you think of what's the worst case scenario, that really helps you understand that could nothing be better than saying a yes to something that you've been really waiting all your life, and even if it is at a risk of certain things that you can probably manage and not regret later on. So thank you so much, Inderpal. I think we have traveled a journey with you together from your growing up days to transitioning into customer success role, but not leaving that will of being surrounded by technology training, suddenly kind of creating your own new version of merging that technology training and customer service role, and flying to UAE, and this amazing, very, very, very unique story of how you landed in Australia. Now, given this, we are close to the kind of wrap up this episode. This is the last chapter, which I would like to kind of discuss over here, is when you started off your life in Australia over here. Early on in your story, you mentioned that you said that you do not have a business mindset. But now, what you're doing, even with support of your peers, is still a business. How has that turned for you or changed for you? How do you look at that now?
Well, that was that I would say what we talked about till now was the phase one. The phase two happened after I had severe backing.
Okay.
So what happened was like I became a risk averse person now. My new me in Australia, and I was like busy doing a lot of stuff and stuff. But then suddenly, human body kind of has a way of showing back that I'm kind of burning out. I'm getting stressed. What what is this happening? So that is when I then kind of reflected back and reached back to my coaches one more time. Say that something is still not clicking. I've got the job, I'm progressing, careers are going good. And then they showed me this perspective of the whole person approach that everything it's like a system. Everything is connected. We end up spending so much focus and energy on work, but we might end up compromising on our health, on our relationships and family. And I realized And that was true for me as well. That was happening. It was all like one area I was focusing on flourishing, but on the other end, I realized that this is impacting my back. And my back pain was a sign of that stress that my body was kind of feeling and taking. That's when, through this whole coaching journey, applied that whole person view of things, and that's why I kind of took it forward. That when I will address my all the needs together, and on also a reflection of what I really want, because I never felt satisfied. That's the moment of realization we talked about discovering my own purpose, putting it in words, because we know it's inside somewhere, but we never let it out. And then I connected the dots that, it was all about service in the beginning, that customer service, why I enjoyed training. It was all about serving. It was all about fairness. And those are my values. And then what I really wanted to do was the money was not motivating. It felt it was, but actually it was not. And then I found this balance and built a strategy around it and this approach to be driven by purpose. And when put all this in place, Shani, I can tell you, I was shocked when I first time moved into this wellness and mindset kind of, activities and actions. I could cure my back pain just by 3 minutes of deep breathing exercise, for which I've been going to the doctor and physio. Now, so when that happened, it worked for me, and we realized. So the realization was everything is connected. It's a system. We have to address the whole person, whole view together. And then, if I have a plan and I put together a strategy behind it, which is tailored to my environment and requirements, aligned to my purpose, I'll be happy with that. And that was the trigger to become a certified coach and pass it on forward. And here I am.
It's lovely, Inderpal, because I think what you mentioned is something so true. And I think only when people, go through those experiences that they really understand. And I think off late as well, I've been experiencing the same thing. And it is a very, very big indicator when you kind of, feel something different in your body. Things start showing in your body. It is an indicator of you taking a lot of stress that kind of manifests in different ways in your body. And to be able to kind of, cure it just with your mindset, with your thoughts, that tells you the power of how your thoughts really affect your entire being and actually the kind of reality you create for yourself. So thank you so much for touching a bit on that. And I feel that we may have to have you back as well very soon to probably delve more deep into this aspect of your life. But I am very sure for our listeners who've been listening, they have been so intrigued in your journey, just like me, up until now in this particular conversation. And just before we take your leave, I like you to given that you are now into this amazing journey of being the certified leader, the coach, that you are helping people become more of themselves, know more of themselves. And one important thing that you mentioned is about actually putting your thoughts into words. And words, it's either could be in, you know, either you write it down or you even say it. It's very important to kind of take it out from your system. It's so important. Yes. So that is something I would like to kind of thank you for kind of putting it out there on the podcast episode today and reiterating that for our listeners and everyone who's watching us today. Before we take your leave, I like you to leave our listeners with any top three tips that you can tell them that how they can really make more sense of their life
Well,
if they're lost.
from my experience, what I'll say is start observing and listening to the signs that your body gives you. But that could be the first and most important trigger. That's one. And then reflect back on what you really want. What is the driver or what is the purpose? And then have a strategy around it. Have a plan, which is only your plan. It may not apply to anybody else, but it is only your plan. And then follow it through. Because in the end, a plan is only as good as the actions that you take on it. So always have that intention to take action. The second tip I would then give is make sure that you are written down or you set out your purpose. What is it that drives you forward? And then have a clear, holistic plan in place around all the aspects that are important and connected in your world. And then once you have that strategy in place, now this is more like a framework. Now you can put your professional skills in that, you can put your life in that, or money in that, anything you want. Now this framework will start working for you. So that's what I can give you.
Amazing. Thank you so much. So, for our listeners out there, these are the three top tips. And for me, I think the personal favorite, more than a favorite, I would say, what is actually the most important thing is the first one. It all starts with your body signs. I think for a very long period of time, we ignore that feeling, that kind of, that pull from within for the longest period of time, because everything else is going fine. It's not the best, but things are just going fine. But then the moment that the body starts giving you signals, that's when you really pause and realize that what's happening. I am good, physically I don't have any challenges. Why my body is still, not feeling good? So it all starts from there. So thank you so much, Inderpal, for being on my first step ever. Before we take a leave with the listeners, as you have been listening to the podcast episode, you know that I would be asking you to leave our listeners with a quote or a saying that you really resonate with.
Well, what resonates with me is the famous quote from Ratan Tata. It says, I don't make right decisions. I make decisions and then make them right. That's what I would leave people with.
Really love this quote. And I think this came to me at a time when I was trying to make a really difficult decision in my life. And I was so paralyzed before taking the decision that I did not know what to do, because you would never know if the decision is right or wrong. And just after, a couple of weeks when I had to take a decision and I was like, oh no, did I take the right decision or was it wrong? This quote came to me, in some form, and I was like, wow, this is really nice. Makes a lot of sense. I don't make right decisions. I take decisions and I make them right. So there's so much power in that.
Yeah, it's all driven by intention. If your intention is right and good for yourself, then you'll turn your decisions well.
Absolutely. So, for our listeners today, here's Inderpal with us, and I know that he's got you intrigued to know a little bit more about what he does today and his journey. And if this is something that really relates to you, it makes you feel that I want to know a bit more about him and his work, I would leave this link in the show notes below. And for all my listeners out there, as I always say, that start believing in yourself and keep believing in yourself. Please do give ratings and please do write your comments. And you can directly reach out to me on my first step ever _IN. That's my Instagram handle. A little about myself. I have always loved performing on stage, acting, speaking, and just emoting myself. So I use these mediums different ways so that I can connect with people, help them, empower them, infotain them, which is to inform them and entertain them. If you would like to collaborate for any opportunities, more than welcome to connect with me on my Instagram handle. Thank you.